Hey, I'm going to show you how to set up my nanoparticles package. Before you start, make sure you have an up-to-date version of Poyomi, the VR Labs particle shader, and the VR Labs Avatars 3.0 manager. And if you want to test this in Unity, you're going to need the emulator as well, but that's optional. You can always just test in-game. Everything is linked in the description and in the instructions document. I will be going pretty quickly, so just pause when you need to. So take the prefab, drag it into your hierarchy, then drag it onto your avatar. Right-click, unpack prefab, expand it, double-click your avatar to focus the camera, and if you're not on the Z-axis view, switch to it. Select particles, and you're just going to scale this up or down depending on your avatar size so that the edges of this circle just seem to be about as wide as where your fingertips would be. Seems good for me. Once you're done, delete the guide object. Then you're going to get to take the top target object and move it up to the very top of your head or whatever's at the top of your avatar, like ears, hat, whatever you have here, just the highest point. And next, you're going to go to your materials. One easy way is just click one of your meshes and then click one of the materials here. If you have more than one material and they're in different folders, I would put them in the same folder first. We're going to make backups, so select them all, Control-D to duplicate, and then drag them into another folder, like I have one here called Backups. Then these do need to be using Poyomi Tune or Poyomi Pro, so make sure of that. And then if they're locked, unlock them first. You need to have the rendering preset on cutout here, and you also need to come down to alpha options under main, and make sure alpha cutoff is 0, alpha to coverage is on, and alpha mod is 0. A couple of these should be correct by default, but you will probably have to change the alpha cutoff, so just make sure those are all correct. Once you have this set up, if you find that your avatar looks very slightly not fully invisible before you spawn in, just try turning up shadow clip mod a tiny bit. Don't do that right now, but if you have that issue, come back and do that later. Okay, now that you have your materials all set up, you're going to go back to the package folder. There's a reference material here. You're going to click that. If you have Pro, the shader is going to be incorrect, so just change it to Poyomi Pro up here. I just have Tune, so it's ready. Go down to this Dissolve section under Special Effects and click this arrow and copy. Then you're going to go back to your own materials, select them all again, and you're going to come down to the same section. Before you paste, just click this little link here, and then drag all of your materials in. That's going to make them share the same settings. Then you click the arrow and paste. Now, you should see this little clock next to Dissolve Alpha. This is going to let us animate that in game. If you don't see it, just right-click right here next to Dissolve Alpha, and it'll show up. The only reason you shouldn't have this is if you have a really old version of the shader, for example, it may not copy over. So make sure you have that. Don't worry about the fact that your avatars have disappeared. We're about to configure this, so come down to point, and you're going to edit this edge length value so that the the blue and pink section here is about as tall as a belt would appear on your body. So for me, conveniently, there's a belt right here. It looks pretty much correct, so I'm going to keep that at the default. And then you're going to go up to where your head is and increase the Y value on start point until it just fully undissolves. You're going to want to get up here and just make sure there's no, there's a little bit of pink there, so I need to go a little bit farther. But you want to get this as close as possible, so you could even try going halfway. Yeah, I'm going to go with 6.5, but get this as close as you can, because this will affect the timing of the animation. Then come down to your feet, set Dissolve Alpha to 1 now, and then go to Endpoint and drag that down to whatever negative value makes you fully dissolve. And then again, you're going to want to just get this as close as you can get it. You see a little bit of pink or blue show up, just go back a little bit. That's perfect. At this point, there's a choice you have to make. So when you use a dissolve animation that has you start invisible, you do have to make a trade-off of some kind, just to do with VRChat's safety system. So if you leave dissolve alpha on 1, there is a specific combination of safety settings. If somebody has your animations blocked, but they have your materials, or sorry, your shaders showing, you'll just look invisible to them. It's not a very common combination, but it can happen. So the other option is to set Dissolve Alpha back to 0, which will avoid that issue. But for one single frame when you spawn in, you're going to be fully visible, and then you're going to disappear and the spawn animation will start. It's not super noticeable, but if that bothers you, you may want to just stick with Dissolve Alpha 1 and just live with the fact that some people's safety settings will be weird and cause issues. So once you've decided on that, you're going to go back to the package folder. You're going to click Animation here. Go to the Animation tab. And you're going to see this keyframe at the top for body. If your body mesh is called something different, you can just click the keyframe F2 and then rename it to be the same as your body mesh. Whatever your mesh is called here under armature, you're going to have it be the same name. Now, if you have more than one, what you can do is click the keyframe, Control C to copy. Then you can rename it to one of the other meshes. Like for me, I have this one face. Just give myself a bit more room. Once you rename it, click some blank space, Control V to paste the original one back in. And then you can just keep doing that until you have a keyframe for each of your meshes. So in my case, I have 4. Make sure you paste the first one back in as well at the end. After that, you're going to, and this only applies if you have a custom FX controller. So let's say you have a custom FX. You would go into your FX controller, click on one of the gray states in any of your layers, and then just look at the right defaults checkbox here. You need to make a note of what you're using because you always have to use the same setting on your entire avatar. So we're just going to match that with the package here in a second. So just make a note of what you have. Then you're going to go to VR Labs Avatars 3.0 Manager. You're going to drag your tutorial, your avatar in, and you're going to go to FX. If you have a custom layer, you'll already see it here, but if you don't, just click Use Default Layer as Custom. Add Animator to Merge. And then now you got to choose which version you want. So there's the normal version, which will just play the spawn animation for each individual person when they first load your avatar. Then there's the toggle version, which will only play the spawn animation when you first switch into the avatar. So after a grace period of, by default, 12 seconds, if people join the world after that or show your avatar after that, they won't see the animation. You'll just show up normally. So pick whichever one you want. Let's say we're going to use the toggle version. If you've gone with the toggle version, you'll see these parameters appear here. Just make sure there's no suffixes. There shouldn't be, but clear them if they're there. And then click Merge on Current. And again, this only applies to the toggle version. You're going to want to go over here to Synced next to Spawn Finished and check that. Don't do it for Spawn Float, just for Spawn Finished. And then finally, you're going to come up here and click Set WD Off or Set WD On, depending on what your right defaults were earlier. If you didn't have a custom controller to begin with, you can just skip that. So just like if they were off, you just click off here. And now you're done. So there's a few things that you can fine tune if you want to. You can change the color scheme. You can change the grace period, so the amount of time people have to load your avatar with the toggle version before it will not play. And you can change like the audio source, the volume of it, or just get rid of the audio source. There's a fine-tuning section in the instructions document that explains how to do each of those things if you do want to make any of those edits. And lastly, there's a uninstall process in the instructions document as well if you ever want to remove this. And there is a troubleshooting section if you run into any problems. The only other thing is if you do want to test in Unity and you have the emulator, all you would do is go Tools, Enable Emulator. It's going to add this object to your scene. And then just, I would recommend clicking pause first and then play, and then unpausing once it loads up. That'll make it synced perfectly. And then you can just make sure the animation looks correct. Or you can just test in game. And that should be everything. So if you have any other issues, just send me a message on Discord, which is at the bottom of the instructions document as well. Have fun.